The story starts in 1968. I was 12 years old. I was attending an art class that met on Saturdays. It was an all-day art class. And we would go and paint at this local artist studio, and sometimes we'd go on a field trip. So this particular day, we were going on a field trip to visit the home of an artist in Woodstock named Clarence Schmidt. And Clarence was an eccentric character. I never actually met him, and I never even made it into his house because he had made his property into a work of art itself. So he had lots of found objects hanging from trees, and it was a fascinating place. So we got there. It was a small little group of us, and I went off on a path around his property, which overlooked, by the way, the Ashokan Reservoir. Was gorgeous. And I got a little ways down the path, and I noticed that there was a picture of a man on a tree, a little ways off the path and into the woods, and I felt a magnetic pull to go and look at the picture. And I stepped off the path, and as I took that step off the path going toward the tree, I had a distinct sense of destiny. And that's the only word that comes to mind that's appropriate. It's just, there was, this has to be, it's destined. So I walk over and I look at the picture. It's the Jesus picture of Baba, and Baba is actually there and he's looking at me. And it's not a photograph anymore. He's looking right at me and into me. And he's looking, his gaze is going into parts of me that I don't even know exist at the time. Suddenly I'm huge. Inside, I'm huge. There's an enormous space inside of me that I didn't even know was there. And in that moment, I hear his voice inside of me, and he says, "I'm the one, and I'm back. Your life is deeply connected with me, and when the time is right, you will know more about me." And it's just fact, you know. It's not something you question. It's just, this is what it is. And so I was kind of dazed, and I remember I went home, and I never made it into the house with the rest of the art class. And so that was 1968, October. Baba would have been, given the time of day, Baba would have been in his bed in Meherazad, in his bedroom at Meherazad, which became, that place, Meherazad and Baba's room, became central to my life later on, much later on. So I went home and I wondered if I had told my mother, or did I say anything about this experience? And so years later I asked her, and she said absolutely, that I had talked about it and didn't know who the man was. Who was that? Where was he alive? Where was he? Knew nothing, you know, no internet. So sure enough, 2 years later, I was 14, and my cousin, who's named Louise Barry, she was coming to New York to visit a friend of hers named Frankie Tacker. And Frankie lived in West Beth, you know, an artist building in the Greenwich Village. And somehow it occurred to Louise that I had to come also. I had to be there. And Louise was, by the way, going to go to her first Meher Baba meeting. Frankie had told her about Meher Baba, and she'd started reading and was interested in Baba. And she got this hit that I was supposed to be there also. So that Friday afternoon, after school, high school, I took the bus. This would have been a first for me, to take the bus by myself to New York. So I took the bus to New York from New Paltz, which is where we were living, and got off in Port Authority, took the subway down to the village, made my way to West Beth, and then the three of us, Frankie, Louise, and I, walked across the village to Barrow Street, which is where the Baba meetings were at that time. And so we all walked in together to Baba House, and there was a giant picture of Baba on the wall as you walked in. And I didn't initially right away connect that Baba with the picture I had seen in Woodstock, but what I felt was waves of love coming. Even as I entered the room, I could feel these enormous waves of love coming from Baba. So many people there. Billy Eaton was speaking that night. And I don't remember a word she said. I was just floating somewhere in the stratosphere. And but so many wonderful people were there. It was just a love fest. And so that's the beginning of the story. 2 years later, okay, so I was still in high school. I very much I came to the center. That's the next thing that happened. Easter 1971, I came to the center with Frankie Tacker. And we would have had a ride the next day, but we were so eager to arrive at the center, and I guess we were on vacation, it must have been Easter vacation, that we decided we'd take the bus instead from Port Authority, 18 hours. So anyway, we got to the bus station in Myrtle Beach and had no idea where we were going, who thought of such things. And so we got a taxi, and the taxi, fortunately, somehow, by Baba's miracle, found the center. We went into the center, and there was, Fred Winterfeld. And Fred and Ella were there, and they gave us huge hugs, and that was worth the trip right there. But then Fred said, no, you drive down here, take this road, and just take them to the kitchen. And somehow the willing taxi driver, I hope we gave him a good tip, took us all the way in, parked us right by the lagoon cabin. And it was a full moon. It was nighttime. A full moon, must have been not too late at night. I just remember getting out of that taxi, and there's the full moon on the lake, and the overwhelming feeling of Baba's love right there. So that, anyway, I won't go into all the details. 2 years after that, I had graduated from high school early because I wanted to go to India. And I did. I had earned, my parents were not Baba lovers, but they said that if I could make the money to go to India, then they would allow it. They would sign my visa, which they had to do. So I cleaned houses. I got little jobs cleaning houses and making smoothies at a local theater, independent theater. So I don't know, it was kind of fun. And I wonder if I really made enough money. I don't know. I kind of think my parents must have supplemented it, but whatever. I got to India. So that was 1973. January, February, came back. I think at the end, after Baba's birthday, maybe in March. So, so what I want to go back to is when I was about 4 years old, I had a feeling about Jesus. And my parents were not religious. They didn't take me to church or anything. My grandmother occasionally would take me. But there was this strong love for Jesus, and I would draw pictures. I can't imagine what they looked like because I was really probably 4, maybe 5. Anyway, some kind of artwork I did, and I would keep them in a box, a shoe box, and I would go out in the backyard and pick flowers and put those in the shoe box with my little offering. They were my offerings. I don't know whatever happened to that. Anyone had found it, I'm sure it went directly into the trash. But anyway, I remember that feeling of love of Jesus. And then one day I said something about Jesus, and my mother said, well, he's not, he died a long time ago, you know. And I was absolutely bereft. I couldn't believe it. And I thought, something's wrong. Something's gone very, very wrong, because I know I'm supposed to be with Jesus. And it was really disturbing, you know, to very young me. I think other Baba lovers have had that kind of feeling too, maybe. I think I've heard similar things. So anyway, we could jump way ahead. Later on in my life, I was very drawn to be in India, and I started going every year and, you know, helping out, so-called, means Baba let us hang around. So I would go to Meherazad every day and be with the Mandali. But yeah, I started going regularly to India, and this is now in the late 80s, and by 1991, I was sitting on Mera's porch. I'm sitting on the far end on the bench, and Meheru's sitting in her chair. Mera has gone to Baba. Of course, it's 91. Meheru's sitting in her chair by the front door to Baba's house. And John Stout approaches her and says, you know, invites Meheru, we'd love to have you come to LA, and would you consider leaving Meherazad and coming? And Meheru says, basically she says no. But maybe she said, I'll think about it. But it was a no. And inside of me, I hear Baba say, she's going, and you're going with her. It was like, wow. I loved Meheru, but I wouldn't feel like I was that close that she would invite me. But another year goes by, it's 1992, Meheru has decided she's going to go. And one day we're sitting on the porch, again I'm sitting next to her, and we're alone, and she says something like, do you speak French? And, you know, I speak some French. So, yeah, I said, yeah, a little bit. And I said, oh. And I knew that she was asking me that because she was going to ask me to go with her, which was like, the whole thing was miraculous. What can we say? Anyway, she did. And so Meheru did a very long trip. She started, it was 4 whole months away from Meherazad, because she decided, well, what made her decide was that she heard Mera's voice say, when you could make so many people so happy, why not go? And that's what made up her mind to go. So she went, people may know this, but she went all over. She went to New Zealand, Australia, Hawaii, Tasmania, and then she did the whole US, which was a big deal because the groups here are so large. And so other people were with her during that part. Christy Pearson was with her during the US tour. And then I picked up in New York, and we went to London. So I was with her for about 5.5 weeks going through Europe. It was fabulous. Went to Turkey and then back to London because that's the way the flight was. And we had left all this luggage with Marion and Alfred, and then we flew back to India. And then from then, I never wanted to leave, basically. I was completely magnetized to Meherazad and Meru and the Mandali, women Mandali, who were still there. So I started helping out at Meherazad, regularly, 6 days a week. But I was at Meherazad. I was staying at Meherazad initially, and I would commute. So I would stay at the usually the nurses' quarters. I had a room there in Meherazad, behind, close to VRDE, which is now off limits. That part of Lower Meherazad is, of course, closed to us. And I would commute every day to Meherazad and get there very early. And usually I'd be in a rickshaw. Occasionally I would be in a car with Janet, because Janet was one of the few people who went out there who had a car in those days. Janet Judson, of course. It was heaven. What can I say? I got to be around the Mandali every day and just help out in whatever way I could. And it was funny little things, or the jobs they would give, like painting the straws green, so that the straws, meaning Meru, would do the vases for Baba every day. So sometimes you'd have flowers that were very short and you needed an extender. So she had these straws she would use. It evolved over time. Now we've sort of gotten a better system. But so I was painting the straws green so they'd be camouflaged, just for example. Eventually, sometimes I would stay at Meherazad because someone would be going away or somebody was sick and they needed extra help. But usually it was the commute from Meherazad. It was kind of tiring. But eventually, in 2003, so I had already been doing this for 10 seasons, although I wasn't living there full time. I would go for 6 months usually. Occasionally I had to extend beyond that. And you'd have to leave the country, go to Thailand, come back to renew your visa. But anyway, it was 10 years. And so yeah, Baba allowed me to be there in his home with his close ones. And it was the greatest privilege one could ever have. Well, I sometimes feel Baba very much with me. And sometimes not. It's a great joy in doing the daily chores that we do at Meherazad. They're joyous tasks. And just, we used to take care of the Mandali, and now we take care of his home. And just waking up at 5 o'clock, being in Baba's room by 5:45 or 6, starting to clean, every day. There's just such a joy in it. And Marimani's room, dining room, sitting room, all of it. And then greeting the pilgrims, showing them around. I very much feel Baba through the people who come, and through my friends, through my dear sisters there, my friends there. Well, there's the Meherazad plan, and that was written by the Mandali. They made decisions about how things should be afterward. So one of the things was that the dining room should not be in use anymore after Meru. She was the last one, and we had a certain amount of time after she went to Baba April 21st, 2012. So April 1st, or March 31st, 2013 was the last day that anyone ate at the dining room table at Meherazad. And, the house is the way it used to be, the place where they lived, but now it's Baba's home that the focus needs to be on preservation so that everything will be there for those who come in the future. We have to keep it as well as we can, for the future, and that's what the emphasis is, the focus now. Yeah, no more teas. Well, we have tea outside in the garden. I think that's the basic story, I wanted to go live in India in 73. I didn't want to go home. My poor mother. There was, of course, no communication in those days except by letter, which took 2 weeks. So she was pretty worried. I turned 17 on the trip. But my mother later came to Baba herself, and my Aunt Sarah too, Louise's mother. So after I got back from India, that first trip, about 6 months later, my father left. And so my mother's world kind of was shattered suddenly. And that eventually led to her coming to Baba. He met Bauji. I think they all had some connection with Baba. Even my grandfather, my father's father, they were from South Carolina. My father had grown up in South Carolina, and my grandfather, one time, Louise was here, and anyway, she got him to meet Kitty. And he and Kitty had a great session. Of course, Kitty could meet anybody right where they were. And they were exactly the same age, my grandfather and Kitty, so he was pretty impressed with her. I just want to say that I'm forever grateful to Baba for all he's given me, and directly and through his Mandali, and especially through Meru. It's my great privilege to be with them.